With the upcoming DLC BioGenesis, Paradox Interactive once again reshapes the gameplay landscape of Stellaris. It focuses heavily on the theme of biological evolution, adaptive species, and revolutionary gameplay styles that depart significantly from traditional Stellaris norms. This expansion introduces fully biological ships and a profound rework of the genetic ascension path. BioGenesis emphasizes the merging of evolutionary biology, controlled mutation, and radical genetic refinement, offering players a dynamic and deeply customizable way to evolve their empires. One of the central pillars of BioGenesis is the introduction of 16 new species traits. Unlike existing traits, these are tied to specific species portraits, much like the lithoid traits introduced in a previous expansion. Each new trait includes a combination of positive and negative effects, creating complex traits rather than simple bonuses. Paradox Interactive's design philosophy encourages replayability and pushes players into exploring different appearances and playstyles. Initially, these traits will not be freely combinable, but players who delve into genetic ascension paths and mutation mechanics later in the game will unlock the ability to mix and match. New negative traits valued at up to -3 points are also introduced, allowing greater flexibility and creativity during empire creation. For min-maxers, this system may feel restrictive early on. However, the long-term payoff is a highly flexible species capable of radical biological transformations. One of the most fascinating new origins in BioGenesis is the evolutionary predators. Players control a species whose natural instinct is to mutate and adapt. Adaptation is semi-automatic, triggered by new challenges, but not purely random. They integrate genetic material from other species encountered through diplomacy, migration, or conquest. Players will experience a new adaptive evolution situation, where colonizing new planets, migration pacts, or vassal integration speeds up evolutionary progress. When a certain threshold is reached, players choose one of several new traits randomly selected. Each evolutionary cycle becomes harder to complete, likely requiring more encounters and development. Importantly, being an evolutionary predator does not lock players into aggressive militarism. Peaceful, diplomatic, or cooperative playstyles are fully viable, a refreshing change compared to previous origins centered on conquest. Overall, this origin promises a fluid, dynamic playstyle that feels dramatically different from both machine empires and traditional biological civilizations. For players seeking the most radical transformation of the Stellaris formula, the Wilderness origin offers an unprecedented experience. Exclusive to Hivemind empires, technological development is completely abandoned. All ships, buildings, and infrastructure are organic. Players control living planets that grow organs instead of constructing buildings. Colonization occurs via terraforming using a unique resource called biomass. POPs generate biomass, which is required for planetary growth and expansion. Traditional industrial districts, alloy foundries, or research labs are replaced by evolving biological structures. This origin evokes comparisons to the Tyranids of Warhammer 40,000, the Zerg from StarCraft, and the Arachnids from Starship Troopers. Players embracing the Wilderness will find themselves grappling with a steep learning curve. The familiar economic models of Stellaris are completely overhauled, requiring new strategies, new priorities, and new timing. The Wilderness origin fundamentally challenges how players think about empire growth, warfare, and colonization. Defensive players have long requested better options in Stellaris. With BioGenesis, Deep Space Citadels deliver. A freely placeable megastructure not tied to planets or stars, it is designed for choke points or critical defensive positions. Built in 3 upgrade stages, each increasingly powerful, it offers new possibilities. Early versions can be constructed once players reach Tier 3 military technology. Players can customize Citadel weapon loadouts using the ship designer. Stage 3 Citadels feature extra-large weapon slots, unique auras distinct from Titans or Juggernauts, and expanded hangar and defense modules. Players are encouraged to think strategically about fortress placement, supporting a defensive, slow expansion playstyle that previously struggled against aggressive AI or human players. Complementing the Deep Space Citadel is the new Starlit Citadel origin. The player's empire has a history of perpetual siege. Their culture is built around massive defensive architecture and eternal vigilance. Empires start with a Stage 1 deep space citadel already constructed at a wormhole. Unique Skywatcher jobs on the homeworld enhance communications, stability, and fleet capacity. The citadel and homeworld feature custom structures reflecting the ancient conflict. If multiple players pick this origin in multiplayer, they will share the same ancient enemy, perhaps hinting at a future mid-game or end-game crisis linked to these ancient raiders. This origin fundamentally rewards defensive-minded players and those who relish turtling strategies without feeling disadvantaged. Biogenesis introduces an entirely new type of fallen empire, the Split Swarm. Originally one hive mind, it is now split into 3 factions: war, growth, and control. These 3 personalities are technically separate empires, but are bound together diplomatically and act collectively. The Split Swarm remains mostly dormant like traditional fallen empires. However, their activity increases dramatically based on player actions. Expanding too aggressively might trigger a response from the war faction. Significant biological advancements could attract growth's attention. Political maneuvers may provoke control. Each personality offers unique event chains, quests, and demands. Players must balance these relationships carefully, as offending one aspect may cause unified retaliation. Under certain conditions, one faction can assimilate the others. Depending on who becomes dominant, outcomes vary. Control might attempt to seize the galactic community. War could launch devastating crusades. Growth might unleash a wave of biological reshaping across the galaxy. This dynamic fallen empire provides unpredictable mid to late game developments, adding enormous depth and tension to every campaign. Biogenesis will have a profound impact on how Stellaris campaigns unfold. Species design becomes even more nuanced and strategic. Early mid-late game transitions become more dynamic, particularly through mutation mechanics. Diplomacy and genetic integration will offer new peaceful expansion paths. Defensive empires become truly viable against hyper-aggressive neighbors. Hive mind players gain incredible new diversity with the Wilderness and the Split Swarm. For multiplayer, expect a significant shakeup in meta strategies, with mutation-driven late-game empires and hyper-defended systems challenging traditional rush doctrines. A major highlight of Biogenesis is the addition of biological ships, which are essentially living vessels made of flesh and blood. These ships are situated somewhere between natural evolution and bioengineered technology, and are fundamentally different from mechanical starships. Instead of alloys and minerals, the construction and upkeep of these ships rely entirely on food, a thematic and mechanical shift that ties into the life sciences theme. Research into these ships is conducted in the social science category, focusing specifically on biology rather than engineering. This not only adds a logical dimension to their construction, but also differentiates biological empires even further in their developmental paths. Notably, Paradox has intentionally left the lore background of these flesh ships open-ended, granting players creative freedom to integrate them into their own roleplay narratives without the constraints of preset canon. The biological ships themselves span familiar ship roles, but reinterpret them through an organic lens. The Mauler, envisioned as a close combat brawler, engages enemies with biological weapons such as pincers and corrosive enzymes, distinguishing itself from mechanical ships that might be optimized for range or mixed combat roles. The Weaver functions as a support vessel, capable of buffing allied ships by hardening armor or accelerating regeneration, or debuffing enemies by releasing spores or biological gases that impair enemy systems. The Harbinger serves as a carrier, launching swarms of biological fighters and either strengthening its point defense or specializing in long-range missile assaults, depending on its organic upgrades. Finally, the Stinger stands as a terrifying late-game battleship, armed with a heavy concentration of extra-large and large weapon slots designed to devastate enemy capitals and large vessels with overwhelming firepower. Unlike traditional ships, biological ships do not simply upgrade their equipment as technology advances. Instead, they undergo a growth process, gaining new slots for modules and weapons as they mature. Growth, however, is not automatic. Ships must have specific key organs installed, which are unlocked through biological research. These organs trigger the next stage of development, analogous to induced hormonal changes in real-world biology. To expedite this otherwise lengthy maturation process, starbases can be equipped with growth chambers, which accelerate ship development, ensuring that fleets remain viable in fast-paced strategic environments. Biogenesis further extends biological design beyond ships. Space stations and even megastructures can be built out of living matter. These too are maintained with food instead of traditional resources, shifting the entire economy of a biotechnological empire. This radical shift also suggests a broader meta-strategic layer, where food becomes as vital for infrastructure as it is for population growth, introducing new economic dynamics that players must manage carefully. Beyond ships, Biogenesis reimagines the genetic ascension path by introducing the system of Biomorphosis. Instead of a singular genetic ascension perk, players are now presented with 3 distinct evolutionary paths: purity, cloning, and mutation. Each represents a fundamentally different ideology toward biological perfection. Purity treats the body as a sacred vessel, seeking to optimize and perfect the existing genetic code, often at the ethical cost of sterilizing or eliminating perceived impure genetic lines. This path ultimately leads to a homogeneous but exceptionally resilient population. Cloning, by contrast, focuses on mass production, allowing for rapid population growth through genetic duplication. However, it raises philosophical questions about individuality and identity, possibly creating social unrest among religious or spiritual factions within the Empire. Mutation embraces the chaotic force of random biological change, enabling the emergence of monstrous or radically divergent forms. Although potentially offering incredible adaptability, this path also risks destabilization and unpredictability, as new traits may not always align with strategic needs. What makes Biomorphosis particularly dynamic is the freedom to switch paths after each of the 3 key evolutionary stages. This allows players to create hybridized species, combining traits of purity, cloning, and mutation, fostering almost endless possibilities for species customization. To facilitate this transformation, a new building called the Genomic Research Facility is introduced, serving as the central hub for evolutionary advancements. The new modular tradition tree further enhances flexibility. Depending on the evolutionary path currently chosen, different tradition options become available, enabling a dynamic reshaping of imperial development throughout the game. This innovation not only diversifies playstyles, but also enhances narrative depth, allowing players to tailor their ideological journey to their evolving empire. The consequences of biomorphosis extend beyond personal empire evolution. As species evolve, entirely new government types emerge, reflecting the philosophical trajectory taken during the evolutionary journey. Examples include the cloning democracy, where clones are granted full citizenship rights in a utopian vision of equality. The mutating hive mind, embodying constant biological flux and potentially tactical adaptability, and the purity dictatorship, a chilling regime where genetic purity dictates social status from birth. Other forms like the cloning megacorporation focus on genetically engineering ideal workers for maximum profitability, and the mutations empire leverages chaotic biological innovation to break through traditional technological limits. Each of these new government forms introduces unique bonuses and challenges, offering fresh strategic depth and role-playing opportunities. While mutation promises the most radical gameplay changes, many questions remain about its precise mechanics. Will mutated traits adapt intelligently to environmental conditions, or will they produce random, potentially harmful changes such as aquatic traits on desert worlds? If mutation is purely random, it could introduce frustrating gameplay elements. However, if it incorporates environmental adaptation over time, it could become one of the most rewarding paths for players seeking dynamic evolution. Stellaris BioGenesis represents one of the most ambitious DLCs Paradox has ever produced for its flagship grand strategy title. By merging radical new biological mechanics, living architecture, dynamic galactic threats, and innovative defensive options, it promises to revitalize the Stellaris experience for veterans and newcomers alike. Whether you're a player who dreams of adapting endlessly to every threat, spreading an unstoppable organic tide, or fortifying your realm against all invaders, Biogenesis offers new frontiers to explore. Biogenesis introduces an unprecedented level of customization and narrative depth. Biological ships bring fresh tactical possibilities, while Biomorphosis offers a flexible, evolving way to shape populations and empires.